Happy birthday. I still remember how loud their voices were. Leona, my wife of almost 20 years, stood by the kitchen island with a wide grin. She was wearing that pale blue sweater I bought her last Christmas, the one she said made her feel like spring. Our two kids, Jonah and Brielle, popped confetti near my face as I stepped in, groggy from working late the night before. The kitchen smelled like vanilla frosting and lemon-scented cleaner. The table was set with a chocolate cake that said, "One step closer," in cursive white icing. There were balloons taped to the corners, a banner that read, "New Beginnings," and a small gift box sitting next to my favorite mug. For a second, I smiled. They remembered my birthday. I mean, I wasn't expecting much, just a quiet dinner, maybe a card. But this looked organized, planned, coordinated. I walked over and hugged Brielle first. She was always the affectionate one, even if lately her hugs had felt more robotic. Jonah patted me on the shoulder like a teammate. His grin didn't reach his eyes, but I chalked it up to being 17. Leona leaned in, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and handed me the little white envelope. "Go on," she said softly. "Open it." I peeled it open with the kind of polite curiosity you show when someone gives you a gift in front of other people. Inside was a printed one-way bus ticket. Destination, Missoula, Montana. Departure, today, 5:20 p.m. I blinked. What is this? Leona stepped back, as if preparing for impact. "It's time for you to go," she said. Calm. Too calm. We've decided to start fresh, with Declan. At first, I thought she was joking. Maybe it was a weird prank. But she wasn't laughing. Neither were the kids. In fact, Jonah looked down at the floor, and Brielle bit her lip like she was waiting for me to explode. "Who's a we?" I asked. Jonah shifted on his feet. "Mom, just tell him." "I just did," Leona replied, folding her arms. "Wait, Declan?" "Declan who?" She glanced at the kitchen behind her like she didn't want to say it, then muttered, "Declan Reyes." I almost laughed. That man? The contractor? The one who rebuilt our kitchen? I had hired him myself. Paid him out of pocket when he said he needed half up front. I used to bring him coffee while he worked. And now he was, what? Replacing me? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw the ticket. I looked at all three of them, my wife, my son, my daughter, and tried to process what the hell was happening. "We thought this would be easier," Leona added, as if that made sense. "This way, you don't have to deal with the divorce or the questions. You can have a clean break. A chance to restart." A chance to restart, I repeated slowly, the words sour in my mouth. "Montana's peaceful," Brielle mumbled. "You always said you liked it when we went to Yellowstone." I remembered that trip. I paid for it by selling my motorcycle. I stood still for a long time. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then I nodded. "All right." Leona blinked. "What?" I said all right. I walked past them, past the cake, past the lies dressed up in party hats. I went upstairs, grabbed a duffel bag, and began to pack. I didn't take much, just a few clothes, my tools, my wedding ring which I tossed in last without even thinking. I didn't take any pictures. Not the one of us at the Grand Canyon. Not the one from our wedding. Not the goofy selfie of all four of us in Halloween costumes 3 years ago. If they wanted me gone, they could keep the memories too. When I came back down, the kitchen was silent. The cake looked untouched. The balloons had started to sag. Leona was standing by the sink, staring at the floor. Jonah avoided my eyes. Brielle was crying quietly, wiping her face with her sleeve. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't ask why. What was the point? As I walked toward the door, Leona suddenly called out, "You're not taking anything from here. Hand over that bag." I stopped, turned around. She had her hand on her hip, like she was still in control. Like this was her house, her plan, her world. I held the bag tighter. "No," I said calmly. "I won't." She opened her mouth to protest, but I was already walking out. I stepped into the driveway. The sun was too bright. The wind too still. Everything looked like it should have been normal, but it wasn't. My car was parked just where I left it. But even that felt like someone else's life now. The sound of the door clicking behind me was louder than I expected. I didn't drive straight to the bus station. I parked behind the hardware store near 6th and just sat there. For hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just stared out the windshield like I was watching a movie of someone else's breakdown. At 4:55 p.m., I drove to the station. I walked inside. I looked at the gate. Watched people board. Watched it pull away. But I didn't get on. I sat down on a bench, pulled out my phone, and in that moment, something strange happened. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because something inside me cracked open and light came in. They thought they'd ended me, that sending me away would clean up their mess, that I'd disappear quietly, broken and ashamed. But I wasn't broken. I was awake. They gave me a ticket, sure, but they also gave me permission to leave the version of me they thought would stay. And I took it. 2 weeks earlier, the cracks had already started to show. It began on a Tuesday night. Leona came home late, again. I was on the couch nursing my third cup of coffee, trying to balance the accounts for our garage. She walked in wearing heels she hadn't worn in months and a silk blouse I'd never seen before. Not even a trace of guilt. Just a tight-lipped smile and the scent of perfume I couldn't name. That's what hit me first. The perfume. It wasn't her usual soft floral scent. This one was stronger, sharp, the kind that lingers. I asked how her day went, and she said, long exhausting, then walked straight upstairs without giving me a second glance. I sat there, staring at the coffee, heart slowly lowering itself into my gut. Something wasn't right. She'd been having long days at the office for over a month. Late meetings, emergency pitches, after-hours networking that ran until midnight. At first, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd build a life on trust, or so I thought. But now, everything felt different. Her stories were shallow, rehearsed. She'd smile, but only with her mouth. Her eyes stayed tired, distant. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe it was burnout. But still, something itched at the back of my skull. A quiet alarm that wouldn't stop buzzing. That night, I stayed downstairs and scrolled through old emails. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Just thinking. Then I remembered something I hadn't used in years, an old burner tracking app we installed back when I used to monitor our company delivery trucks. I had the login saved. Leona's SUV had Bluetooth connected to my account. I never unlinked it. I opened the app. There it was, her last location, not near her office downtown, but a quiet part of town near Lakeview Inn. A boutique hotel with private rooms, no paper trail, and a reputation for discretion. I felt something sink. Not explode. Just sink. The next day, I did what I always do when I don't know what I'm looking at. I kept my hands busy. I finished 2 oil changes, rotated tires for a neighbor's car, and spent lunch pretending the burger in my hand didn't taste like ash. But my mind was racing the entire time. The next evening, while Leona was working late, again, I dug deeper. I found the receipts first. I checked our shared card statement. 2 wine purchases. 2 dinners. Spa treatments. Nothing outrageous. But not places I recognized. I reverse searched them, all within a 5-block radius of Lakeview Inn. My hands didn't shake. I wish they had. At least that would have made it feel like a normal reaction. But no, I felt still. Too still. Then, the final piece clicked in like a cruel little puzzle. Declan. I hadn't seen him since the kitchen renovation finished 6 months ago. I hired him after reading good reviews. He was smooth, professional, quick with a joke. Leona said he had good energy. I thought nothing of it. I even tipped him extra when he completed ahead of schedule. I remember walking in once and finding them laughing. Not unusual. He was funny, and Leona always liked people who made her laugh. But there was a tone in her voice that day. Playful. A little too soft. I told myself I was being paranoid. I wasn't. The wine on the receipts? Declan's favorite brand. I remembered him recommending it to me while working. The restaurant? He posted a photo there months ago on his work Instagram, showing off some fancy lamb dish. And the perfume? A high-end brand that the boutique next to his office carried. I checked everything. Crossed every line. Connected every dot. She wasn't just seeing someone. She was seeing him. It's a strange thing when your world doesn't end in a single moment but instead gets quietly unraveled, like someone pulling at a loose thread on a sweater while you're still wearing it. It doesn't hurt all at once. It scratches. It pulls. It leaves you exposed slowly. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I spent the next few days watching and learning. I tracked the SUV again, same patterns. Back to the inn. Once on a Tuesday. Again on Thursday. I stopped pretending to be surprised. I made a quiet plan. I backed up our financial records, pulled copies of our joint savings, and highlighted the weekly withdrawals she made for groceries that matched perfectly with the dates of her hotel visits. I ordered a new burner phone with no contacts and paid cash for a P.O. box in the next town over. Then, I called Miles, my old college roommate. Miles had always been the smart one. He built a tech security firm after college and lived in a high-rise downtown. He owed me for loaning him money back in the day to launch his startup. I called in the favor. I need a place to crash for a bit, I told him. And I need some help. He didn't ask questions. Just gave me the access code to his guest condo and told me where the spare key was hidden. From there, it became a routine. Leona would smile at me in the morning like nothing had changed. Jonah would grunt on his way out. Brielle would scroll through her phone at breakfast, barely acknowledging me. And I'd smile back, clean my hands with a rag, and keep my mouth shut. I had something better than confrontation. I had patience. I started gathering more. Screenshots, voice recordings of conversations between her and Declan on speaker when she forgot her phone was synced to the car. GPS paths. More receipts. I even caught her lying one night when she said she had a late pitch meeting, but the SUV never moved from the inn's parking lot until 11 p.m. It was no longer a question of if she was cheating. It was a matter of when I'd let her know that I knew. And even more than that, I began to see that this wasn't just about Leona betraying me with Declan. It was about the fact that she didn't think I'd do anything about it. She thought I'd just take it. That I'd get on a bus, cry quietly into a motel pillow, and fade away. She thought she had traded up. Declan had money, after all. He had polished shoes, fancy cologne, a watch that cost more than our couch. He had smooth talk and clean hands. And maybe to her, that meant he had more value than I did. I was the guy who fixed broken brake lines in the cold. The man who brought home grime under his nails. I was the guy who said yes, too much, let too many things slide, gave too many chances. But she didn't realize something important. People like me, who build, who fix, who stay quiet when we're hurt, we don't break. We rebuild. And when we do, we remember exactly where the cracks started. They thought I got on the bus. That was the first mistake they made, assuming I'd walk away like some quiet loser, tail tucked between my legs. But I never stepped onto that Greyhound. I watched it pull away from the station with a backpack full of decoys I'd packed for the performance. Then I walked straight back to my truck and drove across town to Miles' spare condo. No one noticed me. That was the beauty of being forgotten. I'd been invisible for years in that house. Now it worked in my favor. Miles welcomed me with a hug and a knowing look. "I cleared out the back room for you," he said, handing me a spare key and a new laptop. Wi-Fi's under Zebra Justice. Help yourself to the fridge, and don't ask why I own 4 security cameras and a hidden mic setup in a shoebox. I didn't ask. I just nodded and got to work. Leona hadn't removed me from our phone plan. That gave me full access to her call logs and messages. I installed a mirror sync through Miles' system, which pulled her texts into a live feed. She was careless, didn't even have 2-factor authentication enabled. Everything she typed to Declan came straight to me, like a live theater performance of betrayal, updated every few seconds. But surveillance without context isn't power, it's just observation. I needed more than screenshots. I needed proof, patterns, evidence, and time. So I got clever. Before leaving the house for good, I had placed a tiny GPS tracker inside the spare tire compartment of Leona's SUV. It was a leftover from my garage days, part of a job I did for a logistics company. It cost $50 and could last a month on standby. I named it Hummingbird on my device. Every time she left for a late-night pitch meeting, I followed her to the same quiet hotel tucked behind a gas station near the edge of town. Same room number, same check-in times. Sometimes she didn't even bother to switch days. Predictability became my secret weapon. Declan's name showed up on the hotel system under aliases, but the front desk had terrible security. Miles had a contact who helped us pull camera footage from the lobby. There he was, Declan Reyes, in that smug gray blazer and designer boots, walking in just minutes after Leona parked. You couldn't mistake the chemistry. Her hand brushed his back. His fingers tucked hair behind her ear. It was all there, casual and obvious, like they weren't worried about being caught. Why would they be? They thought I was halfway to Montana, crying into diner food. Meanwhile, I was in a high-rise condo sipping coffee while Miles patched together the digital timeline of their affair. We called it the Theater of Lies. With the surveillance gear Miles had installed, we had remote access to their audio when they were in the car together, thanks to the synced Bluetooth still connected to our shared account. I listened to hours of conversations. Some boring, some cutting, some that made me grip the edge of the desk so tightly I left marks. Do you think he'll show up again? Declan asked once. No, Leona laughed. He's harmless. The man can't even look me in the eye anymore. Good, Declan said. Because I don't do messy. Messy. That word stuck. They thought this was clean. Easy. A cut-and-go situation. Just hand me a ticket, send me off, and move in their matching robes before spring. They didn't know I was recording everything. I started cataloging. Each night, I'd label files with dates, locations, and keywords. Laughter, kiss, money, mockery, betrayal. I had audio of Leona calling me dead weight, while Declan described our garage as a rusty man cave for losers. They joked about sending me birthday cake photos while celebrating in Declan's new lake house, one that was being decorated with my money. Turns out she'd siphoned almost $11,000 from our joint savings into a separate account she controlled. The receipts were sitting on our shared banking dashboard, buried just beneath the rent and utility lines. I printed them all. Then came the bank logs. I traced the path of every dollar she moved, first to Declan's business account, then to a holding account in his cousin's name. With Miles' help, I verified every alias, every shell movement. It wasn't just a fling. It was calculated financial theft. But that wasn't even the worst part. It was Brielle and Jonah. At first, I told myself they were just confused, maybe manipulated. But I saw the text exchanges. I heard the recordings. Jonah called me a washed-up grease monkey in one message to Leona. Mom, why didn't you just kick him out sooner? He said. Brielle? She posted on social media that we were finally getting our lives back. She even shared a selfie with Declan in the background, captioned, "New beginnings with the real ones." That's what gutted me more than anything. I could forgive betrayal. I could survive a broken marriage. But watching my own kids rewrite history to erase me, that made me stop feeling sad. It made me start feeling sharp. From that point forward, I stopped thinking like a heartbroken man and started thinking like an architect. Every step they took, I marked. Every lie they told, I labeled. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't send a single message. I didn't give them the dignity of knowing I was watching. Because I had something better than anger. I had focus. And focus, when aimed with enough patience, can become justice. Each morning I woke up, logged in, and watched the dots move on the GPS map. Each night, I reviewed voice logs, pulled chat archives, highlighted transactions. I created backup folders, flash drives, cloud storage in 3 locations. Nothing would be lost. No one would claim it was fake. I even had timestamps and matching weather logs. Meanwhile, I started drafting the package. It wasn't going to be flashy. No big threats. No letters full of rage. Just facts. Cold, clear, unforgiving. A drive filled with photos and voice clips. Printouts of GPS data. A neatly compiled list of every time and place they met. Screenshots of money transfers. Side-by-side comparisons. And, most importantly, a signed affidavit from Declan's first ex-wife. Her name was Rhea, and she had a story to tell. Turns out, Declan had done this before. Met a married woman, pretended to be her, escape, charmed the kids, siphoned money, and bailed once the walls closed in. Rhea gave me every detail. She even notarized it. When I read her story, it was like looking through a window into my own future, if I'd stayed. So I did what needed to be done. I sealed everything in a plain brown package. No return address. Just one word, typed on a label in the corner. Greer. And then, I dropped it in the mailbox. No fanfare. No announcements. Just a quiet start to the storm. The box arrived on a Monday. I know because I watched it land right on their porch from a camera feed I'd quietly tapped into from the neighbor's smart doorbell. A basic security loop, nothing illegal. I had asked Miles to walk me through it and keep it discreet. We didn't hack anything. We just listened where people thought no one was listening. Leona walked out in her robe, barefoot, coffee cup in hand. Her hair was tied up in a loose knot, like she hadn't slept much. The package sat square in the center of the welcome mat, brown, unmarked, quiet. She looked down at it, just for a second, then picked it up like it weighed nothing. But she had no idea what she was holding. Inside was everything. A flash drive labeled, "You asked for this." Neatly printed GPS logs. Color-coded calendar entries showing every one of her meetups with Declan. Photos, lots of them, captured from hotel security footage, porch cams, mirrored messages, and her own social media. But the heart of it wasn't the data. It was the truth behind the shiny image she'd tried to create. And the final nail? That affidavit from Declan's ex-wife, Rhea. 3 pages low. He'd slide in smooth, offer a shoulder to cry on, then drain them emotionally and financially before ghosting. It wasn't a love story. It was a playbook, and Leona was just the next chapter. By 10:03 a.m., my phone started buzzing. 1 call. 2. 7. 11. They came in one after another like gunfire. I let them all go to voicemail. By the time the clock hit noon, I had 93 missed calls in total, 12 from Brielle, 9 from Jonah, 51 from Leona, and the rest from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably friends. Possibly her lawyer. I wasn't answering any of them. I didn't need to. They'd read everything. They'd seen everything. And for the first time in a long time, they were the ones caught off guard. At 12:16 p.m., Leona sent a message that read, "What the hell is this? You're being ridiculous." I didn't respond. At 12:24 p.m., she followed up with, "You're ruining lives, Mason." Again, I said nothing. By 12:48 p.m., she switched tactics. "Please, can we talk? Please." It kept going. 1:09 p.m., we made a mistake. I see that now. 1:26 p.m., the kids are upset. You didn't have to drag them into this. 1:57 p.m., Declan says it's fake. All of it. But I know it's not. The panic was starting to creep in. You could hear it in her typing. Then came a voicemail from Brielle. "Dad, please answer. Mom's freaking out. Jonah's crying." Declan left. He just packed and took his car and left. What's going on? Why would you do this to us? To us? I sat there in Miles' condo staring at the wall, phone buzzing beside me, thinking about how 2 weeks ago, they stood in our kitchen smiling while handing me a bus ticket out of my own life. And now, here they were faced with the receipts they never expected me to collect. There was a strange calm in knowing I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I let the silence do the talking. Later that night, Miles walked in carrying takeout. He raised an eyebrow when he saw the call log on my screen. "Someone's popular today," he said, tossing me a burger. "They opened the box," I replied. He didn't ask what was in it. He didn't need to. We ate quietly, the TV on in the background, muted. Just the sound of forks and paper rustling as we sat like two ghosts watching the flames start to flicker across the bridge they burned. At around 9 p.m., Leona tried FaceTime. I watched the screen ring for a while. I could see the thumbnail preview. Her face looked pale, makeup smeared like she'd been crying. Her background was the living room. My living room. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. I declined the call. Instead, I sent one message. Just one. A single sentence typed slowly. "Don't call again. This is just the beginning." I hit send. Then turned off the phone. I didn't go to sleep right away. I stayed up reviewing the footage again, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel the control she'd taken from me return piece by piece. I watched the clip of Leona opening the package again. She had torn it open like a gift. By the time she pulled out the stack of papers, her posture had already shifted. Her fingers slowed. Her smile disappeared. She started flipping through the photos. Her lips moved, probably saying something like, "No," or "This isn't real." She dropped the affidavit halfway through reading it, picked it back up, shuffled pages like she thought she could unsee them by mixing the order. Then she looked up, straight into the sky. Not at the camera, of course. She didn't know it was there. But I did. She looked straight ahead with that kind of broken gaze that doesn't know what to blame yet. Shock was setting in. Not heartbreak. Not regret. Exposure. That's what hit her. She hadn't just lost control. She'd been seen. I turned off the footage, laid back on the couch, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe deep. Not because I was done, but because I knew this wasn't a collapse. This was a rebuild. The box had done what it was supposed to do. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. It told the truth. And now that truth was echoing through every room in that house, through Jonah's walls, through Brielle's headphones, through Leona's now ruined future plans. They wanted to start over without me? Good. Because I just burned the blueprint. And they could sift through the ashes however they liked. I didn't answer a single call. Not one. I changed my number the next morning. Miles helped me reroute everything: phone, email, even my business listing for the garage. Clean slate. No trail. It was easier than I expected. You'd be surprised how fast the world stops recognizing you when you stop reaching back. Meanwhile, I watched the panic grow. Through Miles' surveillance setup, I could still access some open accounts, including our shared neighborhood group and a few public-facing social profiles. I wasn't spying for entertainment. I was studying. They wanted to start over. They wanted a fresh image. So I gave them something they couldn't scrub. It started small. Screenshots of Leona's messages to Declan leaked onto the local community board. Someone posted, "So this is what happens when your contractor gets too close," followed by an image of Leona calling me a dead limb I needed to cut off. It wasn't even the worst message I had, but it didn't matter. The damage had begun. The comments came fast. Weren't they the couple that hosted the Christmas drive last year? Wow, she really did him dirty. Declan? I knew that guy was fake. Her curated image, strong, sweet, suburban Leona, was unraveling. People didn't need to see everything. Just a piece. A glimpse. Enough to wonder. She tried to push back. I saw a post go up under her name 2 days later. "There's a lot of misinformation being spread. Please respect our privacy as we handle a family matter." That post got maybe 4 likes. One comment said, "Girl, just say you got caught." Jonah sent a voicemail later that evening. I didn't play it. I didn't need to. The transcription read, "This isn't how men handle things. You're embarrassing us. Just come home and talk like an adult." An adult. Coming from a boy who stood behind his mother while she handed me a one-way ticket out of my life. No, thank you. Brielle's messages were a little softer. At first, "Dad, please. Can you at least explain why you do this in public?" Followed by, "I didn't know about the money transfers. I didn't know Declan was taking from your account." But then came the real one. "You didn't have to ruin everything. You didn't have to go nuclear." It hit me how none of them really understood. They thought this was nuclear. To me, it was precise. I had given them a mirror. Nothing more. It wasn't a bomb, it was a reflection. And they didn't like what they saw. I spent those days quietly, living on the edge of a life I used to call mine. Miles had offered his guest condo indefinitely, but I was already looking for a place of my own. Something small. Simple. Preferably near water. Not because I wanted to disappear, but because I finally had the space to figure out who I was without their noise in my ears. Each morning, I made coffee, sat by the window, and wrote down everything I remembered from the last 3 years, things I ignored, brushed off, or laughed away. Leona calling me basic at a dinner party, while everyone laughed. Brielle sighing loudly when I offered to drive her to school in the old truck because she didn't want to look poor. Jonah saying, "Mom says you just fix things because you never built anything real." They've been telling me for years that I wasn't enough. I just hadn't wanted to hear it. Until now. The funny thing about silence is how loud it gets when you stop explaining yourself. They weren't used to it. The more I ignored them, the more desperate they got. On Friday, I checked my old email. There were 19 new messages from Leona. The last one simply read, "We can't breathe here without you. Please answer." I shut the laptop, walked outside, and took the longest walk of my life around the city. No destination, just me and my thoughts. I passed a father teaching his son to ride a bike. A couple arguing gently over a grocery list. A woman laughing loudly into her phone. And it hit me. Life was happening. All around me. Without judgment. Without manipulation. It wasn't just my world that had changed. I walked past a little bookstore tucked between a bakery and a florist. One of those cozy places that always smelled like old pages and cinnamon. I stepped inside, and for the first time in years, I bought a journal. No cover design. Just a blank slate. I started writing that night. Not about them. Not about revenge. About me. What I liked. What I wanted. What I was afraid of. And as I wrote, I realized something important. For nearly 2 decades, I've been living in a role they cast me in, the quiet provider, the safe background figure. But now, I was the author again. This life was mine to rewrite. Later that weekend, Miles pulled me aside. "You know you could have gone off the rails," he said. "Gone full scorched earth." "I still might," I joked. He smiled. "No, you won't. You already won. And they know it." That stuck with me. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. Leona and the kids had wanted a new life. They said so, right to my face. So I gave it to them. No safety net. No hand to hold. No, Dad will fix it. They wanted to fly. Now they had to learn to land. As for me, I was learning how to breathe again. To sleep without grinding my teeth. To eat without that stone of anxiety in my gut. To look in the mirror and see someone I didn't pity. It wasn't peace yet, not fully, but it was the road toward it. And that was enough. For now. Declan's fall wasn't loud at first. It was subtle. Almost quiet. But that's the thing about men like him. They build their lives like glass towers, all shine and reflection, with no foundation underneath. All it takes is a tap in the right spot. I didn't throw a stone. I just pressed. And the whole thing cracked. It started with the yacht. Not that I ever stepped foot on it, but I saw it plenty on Leona's Instagram when they soft-launched their new life. It was his prized possession. Blue hull, 2 decks, some fancy solar integration he liked to brag about to anyone who'd listen. I learned early on that it was technically leased, not owned, under a shell company that hadn't paid taxes in 2 years. I handed that detail over to a tax lawyer Miles knew. No names, just documents. 3 days later, the yacht was impounded off the coast. I watched a video clip of it being towed. Someone uploaded it to a local boating group with the caption, "Guess someone didn't pay their bills." That alone didn't ruin Declan. But it started the ripple. I followed it with the insurance documents, fake claims, double filings, and 2 separate auto policies under different addresses. I printed copies and sent them directly to his insurer's fraud investigation department. Didn't sign the envelope. Didn't need to. Then came the real strike. Declan had a startup consulting business. Real estate, apparently. Or at least that's what the title said. In truth, it was smoke and mirrors, a bunch of borrowed charm and fake partnerships. But one of his biggest investors was a guy named Gordon Trask, a man known for being flashy and brutal when crossed. I didn't know Gordon personally, but I did know he wouldn't like being lied to. So I packaged everything. Meeting photos that contradicted Declan's claimed business trips. Screenshots of his conversations with Leona talking about shuffling funds and keeping the investor happy. A voice recording where Declan joked, "Gordon's too busy buying sports cars to read the fine print." That one got sent directly to Gordon's company headquarters. Declan didn't show up to his own networking brunch the next morning. Word spread quickly about mismanaged funds, unpaid debts, discrepancies in paperwork. His name got quietly removed from 2 business boards. A public statement was posted by one of his partners. "We are currently reviewing our affiliations and taking steps to ensure all operations reflect our values." In other words, they were distancing themselves. Fast. And I wasn't done. I had footage, clear as day, of Declan verbally berating a valet outside a high-end restaurant. The boy couldn't have been more than 19. Declan was red-faced, jabbing a finger, yelling that his Tesla should never be parked behind a Honda. The valet stood frozen, trying to apologize. But Declan kept going. He shoved the kid. Big mistake. The restaurant had outdoor cameras. And Miles knew how to get footage with the right nudge. We trimmed it, uploaded it anonymously. The caption? "This is who you're trusting with your investments?" It went viral in less than 24 hours. Not millions of views, but enough, especially in local business circles. Enough to tank what was left of his image. He posted a video afterward, trying to explain. Stress, poor judgment, we all make mistakes. The usual script. But his eyes? His eyes looked terrified. Because people like Declan can't survive without the lie. They need people to believe the suit means success, that the grin means trust, that the luxury car means power. Once the illusion cracks, they have nothing left. I didn't have to touch him. He unraveled on his own. All I did was hold up the mirror. That weekend, I sat on the condo balcony with a cup of coffee and my notebook. Miles came out and leaned on the railing beside me. "Heard Declan's yacht got auctioned off to cover debt," he said casually. I just nodded. "Heard his car's missing too. Repo guy said he didn't even try to stop them. Just handed over the keys and shut the door." Again, I nodded. No smile. No gloating. Not because I wasn't satisfied, but because satisfaction wasn't the point anymore. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And I wanted that truth to echo loud enough that even people who never looked at me twice would finally listen. I checked my old Facebook that afternoon. I hadn't logged in since the box was delivered. The account had dozens of friend requests. Messages. Some from strangers. One stood out. A woman named Clara. She wrote, "I don't know you, but I just want to say thank you. Declan used to date my sister. He did the same thing. She lost everything. No one believed her. Now they do." That message stayed with me. For years I had walked around trying to convince the people I loved that I was worthy. That I wasn't boring or disposable or too ordinary. I tried to earn love that should have been freely given. But I realized something that day. They didn't replace me because I lacked value. They replaced me because they couldn't see it. And that's not on me. That's on them. Declan's empire had started to crumble, and I knew it wouldn't stop at business. People like him don't just fall professionally. They fall personally, financially, socially. Because when a man's whole image is built on air, the collapse is always total. And in the end, I didn't need to scream. Didn't need to show up with fists or fire. I let him punch himself in the mirror. I just made sure the lights were on so everyone could watch. That night, Miles poured 2 glasses of bourbon. We sat in silence, the city lights flickering around us like stars on Earth. He raised his glass toward me. To staying quiet and doing damage anyway. I clinked his glass. To knowing what people think you'll never know. And for the first time in years, I slept without checking over my shoulder. Because the real weight wasn't what they did to me. It was what I carried trying to keep them from doing it. And now? I had finally let it go. The thing about a house of cards is that once the wind starts blowing, it doesn't stop. Declan was the first to fall. Leona? She thought she was different. That she could survive the storm because she hadn't technically done anything wrong. But betrayal leaves fingerprints, even on the hearts you claim to protect. The week after Declan's little empire crumbled, Leona went back to work at Fairmont and Gold, the marketing firm she'd spent 7 years climbing through. She probably thought if she showed up polished and smiling, people would forget everything. Corporate memory is short, after all, until you give it something to talk about. I'd waited patiently. Every good mechanic knows, if you rush a breakdown, you miss the real problem. But if you study the engine and wait for the noise to reveal itself, the whole thing tells you where to look. I made sure HR received 2 carefully packaged envelopes. The first contained her falsified time card records from the past 6 months. You see, Leona had been clocking billable hours while she was actually lounging around with Declan, dinner receipts and hotel check-ins stamped with exact times she was supposedly running meetings. The second envelope? Client communication transcripts. Emails she edited post-submission. Pitches she copied and pasted from another agency. Nothing wild, but enough to prove she was more show than skill. It wasn't personal. It was precise. At first, there was silence. Then, 2 days later, her firm quietly removed her name from their client-facing page. That same day, she posted a quote on social media. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. Underneath, one person commented, or just stop lying. I didn't write that. I didn't need to. The world was watching now. Jonah took a hit next. Not because I aimed at him, but because actions have ripples. When you ride the coattails of a lie, eventually the wind changes direction. His scholarship committee received an anonymous tip. A folder containing screenshots of messages he sent about me, mocking, disrespectful, even bragging that Dad's finally out of our hair. His application had boasted about overcoming hardship with the support of a hardworking single mom. They didn't like that narrative falling apart under scrutiny. He lost his funding within a week. I read the letter through a forwarded copy. Due to inconsistencies and ethical concerns, the board has decided to rescind our offer. I didn't cheer. I didn't clap. Because this wasn't revenge. It was accountability. He thought he could erase me, replace me with a man who fed him lies and pizza money. Now he had to reckon with what it really meant to build something on his own. As for Brielle, her world had already started cracking. She was counting on a financial aid package from a private college in California. But part of that application involved family income disclosures. When I exposed Leona's hidden account transfers and fake expense claims, it triggered a red flag. The school reached out asking for clarification. She couldn't give one. Her acceptance wasn't pulled, yet, but her aid package was under review. And suddenly, her dream campus felt a lot farther away. They were unraveling, not in public, not in court, but at home, where it hurts the most. Not in the headlines, but in the cracks of their carefully arranged new life. I watched from a distance, quiet, deliberate. Miles once asked if I ever felt guilty. I thought about that for a moment. No, I said. Not guilty. Just done pretending I didn't notice. Because for years, I'd made excuses for all of them. She's just tired. He's just being a teenager. She's figuring herself out. But no one ever paused to ask if I was tired. If I needed figuring out. If maybe, just maybe, I deserved a little kindness back. Now I was done explaining. Done absorbing the damage like a sponge. They said they wanted freedom. So I gave them what they asked for. No safety nets. No one to cover their L. There was a lake about 10 minutes down a dirt road, and a small garage space already framed out on the side. It wasn't much, but it had potential. Just like me. I signed the paperwork in cash. No loans. No help. Just me and a pen. The realtor, a kind older woman named June, said, "It's rare to see someone this prepared." I smiled and said, "It's been a long time coming." In the evenings, I'd sit on a folding chair by the future garage, sipping coffee, listening to the wind through the trees. No phones buzzing. No fake smiles. Just the sound of something real growing beneath my feet. And for the first time in years, I felt unshakable. Because peace doesn't come when people say sorry. It comes when you finally stop waiting for them to. Leona still tried. She sent an email a week after being let go. No subject line. Just a message. I know I went too far. I was selfish. I was blind. You didn't deserve any of it. But you've made your point. Can we please stop now? I read it twice. And then deleted it. Because this wasn't about making a point anymore. This was about moving forward and leaving everything behind that didn't move with me. They thought removing me would make life easier. What they didn't realize was I was the one holding the roof up. Now they were standing in the rain, hands outstretched, trying to understand how everything collapsed without warning. But I didn't do that to them. They did it to themselves. It was raining hard the night I saw her again. I hadn't seen Leona in person since the morning she handed me the envelope, since she stood there, smiling like she was giving me a gift, while our kids pretended they weren't watching their father be erased. But that night, she showed up at Miles' building. I didn't know at first. I was in the back room, sorting through receipts and organizing old tools. My hands were blackened with grease, and the smell of engine oil still calms me. Then my phone buzzed. One of the silent alerts linked to Miles' outdoor security camera. I wiped my fingers clean and pulled up the feed. And there she was, Leona, standing under the small overhang by the front entrance, soaked through. No umbrella. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her mascara had run down both cheeks like black ink bleeding from a ruined letter. She wasn't alone. She held a manila envelope in one hand and what looked like a photo in the other. She stood there for maybe 5 full minutes, staring at the door like it would open by magic. But I never buzzed her in. Instead, I watched. Not with hatred, not even with satisfaction. With stillness. Because I didn't feel what I expected to feel. Not the anger, not the heat that used to rise in my chest. Just quiet. She finally moved. She took the envelope and slid it gently under the door, then placed the photo on top. And then she walked away. No knock. No shouting. Just silence. Once I was sure she'd left, I opened the door. Rain blew in with the wind, wetting the mat. I picked up the envelope first. It had my name on it in handwriting I hadn't seen since our early years, before text replaced notes and silence replaced conversation. I opened it. Inside were old photographs. Us. The kids. Family vacations. The beach trip when Brielle was 6 and wore goggles on land. Jonah's first school science fair. A blurry photo of me asleep on the couch, arms around both kids as they lay across my chest. Taped to the back of one photo was a note. I was wrong. I didn't see it until it was too late. You weren't boring. You were home. There was more. A letter. She'd written pages. No blame. No excuses. Just reflection. She admitted Declan was a mistake, that he was never real, that she thought life would feel lighter without me, but instead it felt like walking barefoot through glass. She said Jonah blamed himself, that Brielle cried at night but didn't know how to apologize, that the money was running out, that the walls were closing in, that freedom wasn't freedom, it was emptiness wearing a nicer outfit. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "Please let us talk. Just once. Please." I sat on the floor with the photo in my hand. The one of all 4 of us at Jonah's 10th birthday. We were sitting on the front steps, cake on our faces, laughter frozen in time. I held it there in the quiet for a long time. And then I stood up. I went to my desk, pulled open the drawer, and took out the divorce packet. It had been ready for weeks. Clean. Final. Notarized. I slid it into a new envelope. Along with it, I included a short card. Not a letter. Just a sentence. Thank you for the ticket. I really did need to leave. The next morning, I mailed it. No signature. No dramatic send-off. Just a clean drop into a blue box on the corner of 8th Street. It was the final step. Not of revenge, but of release. Because here's what they don't tell you about heartbreak. It doesn't end with the other person saying sorry. It ends when you stop needing them to. Leona had finally seen what I meant to her, but not because I begged. Because I left. And she had to sit in the house without me. Sleep in the bed I bought. Pour coffee in a kitchen I paid for. Look at her life and realize how little of it she actually built on her own. Meanwhile, I was somewhere else. Alive. Free. Whole. People say closure is a conversation. I disagree. Closure is a decision. It's a boundary. It's an envelope dropped into a mailbox when you know, deep down, you've already said everything that needed to be said. The next few days were quiet. No more calls. No more emails. Just silence. I think she got the message. I visited the lake property later that week. The air was clean, and the breeze had that soft bite that says fall is coming. I stood in the middle of the unfinished garage, staring at the frame, imagining the shelves I'd build, the lift I'd install, the projects I'd finally have time for. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was no longer pretending, no longer smiling through hurt, no longer carrying a family that let go of me long before they ever told me to leave. Leona's photo sits in a drawer now. Not torn, not burned, just placed where it belongs in the past. Because healing doesn't always look like starting over together. Sometimes it looks like restarting without them. Months passed, and just like that, the noise stopped. No more missed calls. No more emails. No more envelopes under my door. Leona had finally gone quiet, and so had the kids. And for the first time in years, I lived without looking over my shoulder, waiting for guilt to grab me by the throat. I wasn't hiding. I was living. People say it takes time to feel normal again after you've been gutted by the people closest to you. But I wasn't trying to go back to normal. I was building something better, something mine. I moved into the lake house in late October. The trees had already started to shed their leaves, and the shoreline glistened under a soft, gray sky. There was peace in that silence. I didn't miss the arguments. I didn't miss the forced family dinners or walking on eggshells around teenagers who decided their father was nothing more than a placeholder. I didn't even miss Leona. That part surprised me. I thought I would. I thought I'd feel that ache every morning, the kind that lives just beneath your ribs. But the truth was, the more I built my own life, the more I realized how much I'd let myself be reduced to a role, the provider, the fixer, the one who smiled even when the jokes cut deep. Not anymore. These days, I woke up at dawn, brewed my own coffee, took a walk around the lake trail, spent the afternoon rebuilding vintage bikes and restoring a '68 pickup I found rusting in a barn 15 miles out. It was quiet work, satisfying. No schedules, no small talk, just honest labor and the hum of progress. I'd become something else. Not bitter, not broken, just free. Word traveled, of course. Small towns always talk. I heard whispers through miles and the occasional visitor from town. Declan was gone, vanished, left town in the middle of the night, leaving behind unpaid bills and a string of half-finished renovation jobs. One family had to take out a second loan just to fix the damage he caused. Another said he took a deposit and disappeared. I wasn't surprised. He was never built to last. The part that did surprise me was what happened to the family I left behind. Brielle moved out. She didn't go to California like she'd planned. That financial aid never came through. Instead, she ended up renting a room with a friend on the other side of town. No fancy dorm. No sorority life. Just a cramped apartment, a part-time job at a bookstore, and the quiet realization that the world didn't run on Instagram likes and birthday parties. Jonah started working nights at a gas station. That scholarship loss hit him hard. Leona tried to fight it. I heard, called the committee, tried to spin the story, even hinted at legal threats. But it didn't work. The board stood firm. Words matter, they said. And Jonah had used his like weapons. He paid the price. And Leona? She downsized. The house was too expensive on her own. With no job and no savings, thanks to Declan bleeding her dry, she ended up renting a studio apartment in a rundown complex behind a strip mall. The kind with flickering hallway lights and thin walls. A place where people only live when they've run out of better options. She'd once laughed at my garage, called it my cave. Now she lived in one. A neighbor dropped by the lake one Saturday. An older man, Mr. Harper, who used to be friends with my father. Ran into your ex-wife at the grocery store, he said. Didn't recognize her at first. She looked small. I didn't respond. He glanced at me. You doing all right out here? I'm doing just fine. And I was. I had no interest in revenge anymore. No list to check off. No point to prove. Their lives were falling apart, yes, but not because I pushed them. It was gravity. You can only hold your lies up for so long before they collapse under their own weight. They wanted freedom. They got it. And me? I finally had space to breathe. I started getting small repair requests from neighbors, people who heard I knew engines, or that I could fix anything with wires. I didn't advertise. I didn't need to. It felt good, though, to build again, to feel needed, not for what I represented, but for what I could do. One afternoon, while replacing a carburetor on a neighbor's bike, I heard footsteps on the gravel path. I turned. It was Brielle. She looked different. No makeup. Hair tied back. Her coat too big for her. She held a brown paper bag in both hands like it was something sacred. "Hey," she said. I wiped my hands and nodded. "Hey." She stood there for a second. "I heard you lived out here." I asked around. I didn't move. She offered the bag. "I brought pie. From that old bakery you used to like. Cherry." I took it, more out of politeness than hunger. She didn't leave. Instead, she said, "Mom's not doing great. Jonah's angry all the time. Everything feels broken." I waited. She looked at me like she was searching for something, maybe the version of me she used to roll her eyes at, the one who quietly paid her phone bill even after she told me I wasn't a real father. "I didn't come to fix anything," she said. "I just wanted to see if you were okay." I nodded. "I am." She looked down. "I'm not asking for anything." "I know. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I didn't say anything right away." I placed the bag on the porch railing. The wind tugged lightly at her sleeves. "Thank you," I said finally. She nodded. "I'll go." But she didn't move right away. And neither did I. After a moment, I said, "Tell your brother I hope he finds his footing. And tell your mother. I hope she finds peace." She smiled faintly. "She won't admit it, but she reads your name on mailboxes. She walks past houses wondering if one belongs to you." I didn't reply. She left quietly, walking down the gravel path like she'd shed something heavy and didn't know what to do with the emptiness. I watched her go, then returned to my work. The pie stayed on the railing, untouched. Maybe later. Right now, there was an engine to fix. My last letter came on my birthday. Not a call. Not a visit. A letter. Handwritten. In a plain white envelope with no return address. Just my name written in tight, familiar script. It arrived on a cold morning, slipped under the door, just like the old days, back when the world still felt full of second chances. The envelope was creased, like it had been carried for a while before being delivered. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper. Lined. No fancy stationery. No perfume. Just a pen. Just Jonah. "Dad, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, or if you'll even read this. But I'm writing anyway. Because it's your birthday, and I haven't earned the right to say it in person. So here it is. Happy birthday. I was angry. At everything. You. Mom. Myself. I thought if I backed her up, she'd love me more. I thought if I erased you, I'd finally become enough. But all I did was lose someone who never stopped being there, even when we didn't deserve you. You fixed our bikes when we left them in the rain. You packed our lunches, even when you had grease under your fingernails. You were never flashy, but you showed up. And I didn't get it until you were gone. I work night shifts now. It's not glamorous. I pump gas, mop floors, listen to drunks argue over lottery tickets. And every night, I think about how you did this kind of work without bitterness, with quiet pride. You didn't deserve what we did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, I finally see you. I finally understand. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Love, Jonah. I sat at the edge of my workbench holding that letter for a long time. The paper was soft. The ink had smudges, like he'd pressed too hard or wiped away tears while writing. I could see my son's handwriting, the same loops from his school assignments, now less neat, more real. I didn't cry. Not then. I folded the letter, placed it in my drawer next to Brielle's photo, and sat with it. Not the paper, but the moment. The realization that something had shifted. Maybe not repaired, not completely, but shifted. And that mattered. Later that week, I sent Jonah a check. Not big, not dramatic. Enough to cover tuition for community college's first semester, along with a note that simply said, "For the man you're choosing to become." I didn't sign it, Dad. I didn't need to. Some things are better rebuilt slowly, from the ground up. I never heard back directly, but I saw the cleared deposit in my bank logs. That was enough. He'd accepted the gesture. Whether he ever came to visit or not, I knew I'd done my part. It wasn't about being a father again. It was about being a man who keeps his word. As for Leona, I never saw her again. Not in passing. Not in the distance. Not even at the grocery store. And if I'm honest, I don't think she'll try again. Not because she doesn't want to, but because I made it clear. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be left in ashes, so we remember what we burned. And I was okay with that. Closure, for me, didn't come in the form of a big apology or some tearful reunion. It came one morning while I stood by the lake, watching a pair of ducks skim across the water. The light hit the surface just right, the way it doesn't fall when the air is cool and the trees bleed orange into the sky. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because I was where I was supposed to be. A man with calloused hands and a clear mind. A man who survived being cast aside like a spare part, only to discover he was the engine all along. I opened a small repair shop on the property that November. Locals started coming by more often. I didn't advertise. People just knew. Word travels fast when your work is honest. I fixed broken fans, leaky pipes, rusty hinges, aging motorcycles. And slowly, something else repaired alongside the machines. Me. I started laughing again, not forced chuckles, but real, chest-deep laughs. I started humming while working, even whistling sometimes. I drank my coffee without rushing. Cooked full meals for myself. Ate at the table instead of standing at the counter like I had for years while everyone else sat and stared at their phones. I stopped checking old photos. Stopped wondering how they were doing. Not out of coldness, but out of healing. When people show you who they are, you believe them. But when they try to take everything from you, and you survive anyway, that's when you discover who you are. I was no longer the man holding the camera while someone else posed for the spotlight. I was no longer the one fixing sinks while being called useless. I was no longer the placeholder they shoved aside to play family with someone shinier. I was Mason Greer, the man who took a bus ticket meant to exile him, and turned it into a passport toward peace. And here's the thing. Sometimes people push you out because they think you're too weak to walk away. They laugh as you pack your bag. They think your silence means defeat. They think you'll break without them. But the truth? You're just waiting. Waiting for the moment when walking away becomes a gift instead of a curse. And when that moment comes, you don't go back.